jump right into it. I love the banter we have usually before we start hitting record.
You just start it and go from there.
Because we usually have some good banter and be like, dang it, we should be recording this. And then we start recording and we're like, let's talk about the show, I guess. I'm using a different camera this time too. I'm not sure it's as good as my other camera.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. This computer's more reliable. So.
Yeah.
You never know. So how'd you like the picture?
That was something. That was something pretty music. Special.
Yeah, I'm kind of a expert. At Photoshop.
Are you there, Michael Scott? You're an expert there.
I was hoping you got the reference.
Of course. Yeah,
of course.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And oh my goodness, you shaved your beard! Wow! Oh my goodness, I'm so surprised.
Wow. You had to say it this time because last time you said nothing.
All last week, and so I just thought I had to act surprised this week. Like, oh my gosh, your beard's gone.
That was terrible acting. I would definitely stick to the other side of the camera.
Well, I appreciate the honesty there. I'll take the honesty any day. Also, I've got a question for you. Why is your Facebook name currently Marak Yahan?
Because I'm looking for jobs and I don't want anyone finding my Facebook page.
Okay, that checks in with what we discussed last week with Facebook and work stalking. So okay, now I know. I was just curious.
Yeah, I had a friend of mine who, back when I was in college, my freshman year, he was a senior and he was in the medical program. And he was looking to go into medical schools, so he put dashes in the middle of his name, separating out like the syllables so they couldn't find him. And he changed like the vowels, so it was still his name, but it was just spelled like slightly off.
Yeah.
You know, I think he changed like an A to a Y or something like that, so they couldn't find him. And that made sense. But when I went to do that, Facebook no longer allows that and actually said that it should be a name that appears on an ID. And I'm just like, geez, Facebook, you're really sold out. Haven't you? You're really like all into this like pro, I don't know, like losing your anonymity, losing your privacy, just straight Big Brother thing. Ooh, you're drinking water this time too. Yeah, it's not just me.
I grabbed myself some water this time too.
I'm just going through the editing and watching some of our videos. I'm just like, man, I grab my water bottle a lot while I'm talking. I don't know if that comes
when
from
I've edited, I've always
preacher day.
Yeah, when I've edited, I've always cut away from you whenever you've been, because usually you do it, obviously, whenever I just bumped my table. You usually do that, whenever I'm talking. So I've always just cut away with it. If I'm trying to show your reaction, I'll always cut away when you're taking a drink.
Well, it's that funny. That's the funny thing is you're cutting away, but it's still showing up enough times that
it's still there,
that it's getting on the screen. It's like, but yeah. So I'm gonna probably put together a little compilation of all those.
Yes,
I texted you that. Just take all those clips and just mash them together. It's just funny.
I'll tell you what.
Welcome to Buddy Movies.
We should
do the introduction, I guess. Yes. Welcome to Buddy Movies. Today we are going to be talking about Shutter. Oh, I am Mark
and I'm
Young.
Anthony Watkins.
Scratch it. Start over. Welcome to Buddy Movies. I am your host,
and I'm
Mark
your host,
Young.
Anthony Watkins. There.
We are both hosts. We used to fight over the co-host thing and who's the co-host, who's the host.
Assistant to the host.
Assistant to the
host.
Assistant to.
Yeah, clear distinction there.
Yes. All right, Dwight. Welcome to Buddy Movies. Today we're going to be talking about Shutter Island, which is just a terrible movie.
Ron, sir. Very, very Ron. I rewatched this. This movie is even more brilliant than I thought it was the first time around. I am very
Oh my
excited about
gosh.
this movie is far better than I remember it being. Oof, my goodness.
So before we jump into that, but what else besides Shutter Island have you been watching lately?
Lately, I haven't actually watched it yet. I want to see Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead that's on Netflix. He directed a new zombie movie
Okay.
for Netflix.
Yes,
It
I
got
did
like
hear about
some,
that. Didn't they like have to replace Chris Diala or something because of the
I don't
controversy
know.
with? Yeah, I heard they went through and edited the one actor out and digitally replaced him with Jet
Okay.
Reno. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of interesting to me to see like how that actually works. Um, what's his name? Dave Bustio, who's in the movie, I think, was saying that he's never actually met Jet Reno, even though he's co-stars with her and has
Yeah.
lines
Oh
that he
man.
quips back and forth. So it's just kind of funny
Also,
and
yeah. I will
amazing.
say I'm also watching Fringe right now. I'm trying to watch an episode a night.
Oh
Yeah,
yes,
so
you
I
did
think I
say
said that
that.
a couple weeks ago. It was my first time going through it, so I'm trying to watch that just on the first season. But
Mm.
what else? I mean, yeah, nothing too much else right now. I've just been busy. I haven't had time to watch, a lot of new shows and stuff. Yeah. How about you? You watching anything new these days?
Um, well, I've been watching on the recommendation of my father-in-law. I started watching Jesus
Oh,
of
that's right.
Nazareth, which is like from the 70s. It was a mini series or something. So I've gotten through the first two episodes. Overall, it adds up to like 7 hours of a movie.
Yeah.
So it's I'm taking it one piece at a time. So hour and a half here, hour and a half there, and it says it ends. It's like it runs credits for you in the middle of it. Like so, it aired in parts on TV, so it's not that difficult to
Yeah.
do. But it is long. I got through. I didn't know if they were going to edit it in parts because it's playing as one large movie on Amazon Prime, and I stopped after the first 40 minutes. And in the story of Jesus, after 40 minutes of watching this movie, Mary and Joseph had finally gotten married.
Wow.
That's how detailed this movie is. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a bit
Yeah.
nuts. Um, I started watching that because I've also been watching the show The Chosen,
Yes, I've heard of that.
which I don't know if you've heard of it. Yeah, it is. That's a solid show. And it's not just it's good for Christian TV. It's actually like
Actually, yeah.
solid stuff. I'm really interested to see what they're doing with the characters. They're taking some artistic
Right.
liberty
You
with it,
expect that.
which happens, but I like how they're merging the stories and having been on the inside of a ministry before. It's interesting to be like, wow, yeah, that's probably how that would happen. Or, yeah, I could see those characters not getting along because of this. Because that's one thing I've never really thought about was the fact that the 12 apostles probably didn't actually get along
Mm.
at first because you have like these Jewish fishermen and an actual tax collector who's literally like a traitor to their people. And then you have Simon the Zealot, who is basically a radical and thinks that they need to physically fight Rome, like start trouble and do terrorist acts. So it's like, okay, wow. So that you actually have these characters like bumping
Yeah.
heads on how they should handle
Yeah,
things.
I should.
So, and then I also forgot that Philip and Andrew actually were following John before they came to Jesus and started following him. So it's like they have experience with John and know him. So it's like they got this extra knowledge of how things go that the other disciples don't have because they haven't been involved in something like that before. So it just got a lot of interesting aspects. And man, yeah, it's just a powerful show for Christians. It's definitely
Yeah.
powerful, but it's still a high quality show, not just for Christians. It's not like, oh, well, that's pretty good for Christians. There's another movie like it's called
Mm.
Believe Me, which is a Christian movie, and it's about Christian guys who pretend to be Christian speakers, like conference speakers, and they go to conferences and they're making all this money taking offerings and they're taking their cut for their ministry, which is a fake ministry that they've just
Yeah.
set up. So they're like con men on the circuit, and it's like that movie's good for a Christian movie. But this is just a solid series, man.
Sweet. Yeah. Laura actually brought that show up a couple days ago or several days ago, and I was like, now you're bringing it up. It's like, yeah, we should definitely get into this show because Christian Christian material, like especially like in film and TV shows, can be very hit or miss these days, and so it's hard to find one that's actually well written, not just super cheesy and really out there. But I'm glad to hear this one actually is very well written and engrossing and everything. I'll definitely have to check it out.
Yeah, and they're planning to do 7 seasons
Wow,
is their plan right now.
that's ambitious.
So things are definitely moving slower than you would expect in any typical Jesus movie. I've seen tons of them. So it's like this slow burn, and I love a slow burn. Like Breaking Bad was my kind of show, and this has the same type of thing where, they're building towards something, the pieces are being moved around, they're setting up stuff. I'm liking it. I'm excited to see more.
Awesome.
I hope they end up getting funded for all 7 seasons because it's all crowdfunded too. The entire series is. So, but it's also free to watch, and they have an app that you can watch it on. And I haven't donated. I haven't been able to buy any of their gifts. They don't call it merchandise. They call them gifts. But it's been nice to be able to see a high quality show like that. And then on the flip side, I've been watching every Mortal Kombat movie.
Oh my goodness.
So it's just like, Jesus, Mortal Kombat.
I literally watched the new one that came out on HBO Max the other week with a friend group, and I wasn't familiar with the video game at all. And afterwards, I was like, this movie's so violent. It makes Deadpool or these other movies look like a PG movie. But then afterwards, we went on YouTube and actually looked at kills from the games themselves, and they're 10 times more violent. I was like, wow, this makes this movie look like a PG movie.
That was the whole thing that was missing from the PG-13 movies, because they had 2 movies in the 90s. One was released in 95, the other in 97. And they were both PG-13 because, you get more people to come into a PG-13 movie. But they just didn't have the key thing to Mortal Kombat that made Mortal Kombat different from Street Fighter or, there were so many other fighter games back then. But the thing that made it stood out was these, they called them fatalities. So, and there were special moves that they didn't tell anyone how to do them. They didn't even tell anyone they were in the game. They designed these things, they hit them in the game, and they waited to see how long it would take people to find out that there were these special moves they could do if they stood at the right place, and they could, tear someone's head off or, slice them in half or crazy, disgusting, beautifully violent things. And they were found in the first day with the first quarter that some kid put in. And then it took them weeks afterwards for them to find him again. The first person who played the game found him and said, "Hey, did you just see this?" And no one believed him. But it took them weeks afterwards to recreate the same move.
I just realized it's
pretty.
It's just it feels like the game is how many creative ways can we come up with to kill someone? It's basically how the game feels to me, or at least how the movie felt. Again, I'm not really familiar with the game much, but overall though, I will say I found the movie to be pleasantly and actually entertaining. That's definitely not one I would go out and buy or anything crazy like that, but I thought the opening scene so you haven't actually gotten to the movie yet, right? To the newest one, Mortal Kombat.
No, I watched the newest one first because I saw the 90s one back in the 90s. I hadn't watched the second one though, and it's terrible. I got about halfway through it. The plot is horribly predictable, and the graphics are awful. And the graphics in the 90s one were awful as well, but it's just even worse. in the
Yeah.
sequel. Some of the actors were changed out, but some of them
Oh
weren't.
yeah.
So it's just this thing where I just was like, I give up.
Yeah.
I give up. I'm not watching this movie before because it leaves HBO Max, I think, at the end
Okay.
of the month. So at the end of May. So I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm not going to finish
I
that.
thought the best
They got like
I,
a,
I I thought the
yeah, go
best
ahead.
part of the newest movie was the opening scene. That opening scene was so well done, like very very well done. I was hoping the rest of the movie would be kind of as good as what the opening scene was, how well it was shot and everything, but sadly it wasn't.
Hmm.
But still, the opening scene was
No,
this
it was
opening
not.
scene was very very good. I thought.
Yeah, they released the first 7 minutes,
Hmm.
um, like a week before the
Yeah,
movie came out, and it was on HBO Max. You could watch the first 7 minutes. So I was like, ooh, and that actually hooked
yeah,
me into watching the movie because otherwise I wasn't really going to watch it. But that opening scene was um, built a lot of story. It
yeah.
was
Very
really good. I
suspenseful
liked
and
it.
very well done.
Hmm. Yeah, so I hope to see more of where they go with this. There's a lot of content. The other thing that's kind of they have, I think they're on like Mortal Kombat 11
Yeah,
now,
it's
as far as
so
the
many
games are
games.
involved. So many games, but they're introducing so many characters to it now. Literally, you can play as RoboCop and Rambo. You can be the Terminator. Like they have all these like 80s,
Yeah.
stars of crazy action movies, and I'm like, dude, you're kind of drawing me in
Hmm.
here. The fact that like you could have Scorpion fighting Rambo, I don't know. That seems like it might be fun to
Yeah.
play, you know. So I haven't bought it yet for the simple fact of since my son plays like Minecraft and a couple other games on the PlayStation 4 that we don't really have age restriction on it because there's certain things that he does that he's good at and we trust him with because they age restrict it for
Yeah.
some reason. Certain games have an, and I'm just like, ooh, I don't know if I don't want him to have access to that game. I know for a fact I don't want him to have access to that game. But if I put it on the Xbox, I don't know, our PlayStation 4, there might be a way to do that. If you know of a way to do that, let me know in the
Hmm.
comments, any
Yeah.
viewers. But yeah, so we'll see.
I.
Yeah, Mortal Kombat it's a game I wasn't allowed to
Hmm.
own, but my friends
I
had it.
see.
So, oh yeah, all sorts of craziness.
I will say something else very big happened today, and that was at work at Sight and Sound, employees no longer have to wear masks at work. It was such a big
Yay!
day. This was the first
Progress.
time in literally over a year because we started back up, I want to say in July of last year. So, almost an entire
Hmm.
year of having to wear masks, and it was very liberating, long overdue. I was so glad. Just there's nothing worse than trying to run around and be wearing a mask and suffocating your
Right?
mask. So I was just,
Yeah.
and also it's also nice just to see, like I was at Best Buy earlier tonight and seeing signs where like they
Hmm.
on the door it says masks are only required for those who are unvaccinated. But it's like
Hmm.
they can't legally ask, come up to you and ask, are you vaccinated? So it's kind of like it's totally on the honor system. So like you see like
Yeah.
half wearing.
They've taken the signs down at most of the places around here. Like Wegmans didn't
Okay.
have the sign up anymore. I don't know if Walmart does
Yeah.
either, but a lot of places they're just not even
Yeah,
bothering with
it's
the
like
signs. Of course, I'm a
it
little
feels
further
somewhat
south,
pointless.
and
It's like how many people do they actually expect are gonna go by the honor system of, oh, I'm not vaccinated, so I will wear my mask. Like, yeah, I don't see a lot of this isn't I don't see a lot of people actually following that, but it just
it's also the thing that's like it's not everyone needs to be vaccinated, and I'm probably going to lose support here from some people. I don't care. Um, but just like the flu, not everyone needs to have the vaccine. You need to have those who are in more danger. And I just cannot get over how fast these vaccines
mhm.
were made. I'm not an anti-vax person. I'm not in that camp really at all. Um, but they came out so fast. One of them, of the four that were created, they've stopped using it because there's been
Yeah.
problems with it. And then one of them, I can't get over the fact that the one company, which I haven't verified this, so I should, but from what I understand, the one company has never created a successful vaccine.
Mm,
They've never gotten it out of trials before. But since they're skipping the last phase of trials just to get it out there for emergency use, they got their vaccine out. They got their first
yeah.
vaccine out. So that type of stuff just bothers me. So since I'm in relatively okay health and younger, I had the
You did have it.
coronavirus, I survived it,
Yeah.
so it's this whole thing of like, I'm gonna say no to the vaccine for a while,
Yeah.
you know, until they've gone through more testing or until they come out with a better version of the vaccine later on. Until it's past, um, excuse me, until it's past just it's okayed for emergency use. Because as far as I know, it's still only okayed for emergency use, but they're trying to encourage everybody to get
Mm,
it, which is that's just
yeah.
mind boggling to me.
I'm
It's
just,
like something that's okayed only for emergency use should not be something that
yeah. For
everyone
me, I
uses.
just, what really bothers me is when I see Facebook saying, "Hey, you can flip your profile picture frame to saying I got my vaccine." All this stuff of them of pushing the vaccine onto you, and it's like, if I want to get the vaccine, fine, but it's like I don't want to be pushed into getting it because that makes me actually not want to get it. Whenever a company is trying to
Right?
actually compel you and almost guilt trip you into getting it because oh, you're not a very
Yeah,
good person if you
exactly.
don't get the vaccine. You're risking someone else's life if you don't get the vaccine. So you're part of the problem if you don't get the vaccine, type of thing. I hate that mentality. I doesn't suit well with me. Yeah, that's a whole different, whole thing. But
Yeah, I was just checking. I wanted to see if they look for some type of verification when you use that, but I closed it down the other day and just said, no, I'm not interested in getting
yeah, you get that on
that skin on
you
my.
get that on Instagram. You get posts from it on Instagram. You get it on Facebook. I think you get it on Twitter. Like literally every social network, you get bombarded by these. Have you got your vaccine yet? Here are all the resources for you to get your vaccine, type of thing. It's just,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't care if someone
yeah,
wants to go get it. It doesn't
it's a
bother me.
personal
It's
choice.
just this whole thing of, I just don't see how. The other thing is they're pushing this. Yeah, it really, I just don't like the division. I don't like the government control aspect of it. That's definitely my more conservative roots coming out
Yeah,
there, where I'm just like, I hated the lockdown. I hated the clampdown on people. I really feel we should have gone with different ways of dealing with things, but we're
yeah,
past it now. I mean, I understand wanting to keep people safe. I do, but just my own personal struggles that I've had in my life, having lost a few people to suicides and people to drug overdoses and stuff like that, and watching this past year and watching those things
mm-hmm.
skyrocket, literally skyrocket, and then the amount of relationships that I know that have broken up this year that have had like real struggles and have a huge strain where yeah, maybe they already had issues beforehand, but now it just gets overloaded by coronavirus and being stuck inside all the time with each other. I don't know. That's to me, these are personal, those are high costs as well. Obviously the relationship is not the same as,
Yeah,
death, but there's been a skyrocket amount of people who have committed suicide and who have had drug overdoses. And that to me is very worrisome, especially when you look at the coronavirus numbers and it's high, but I don't know. I don't, it's definitely more death this year than last year. And coronavirus definitely killed a lot of
yeah,
people. But I still see it being like, okay, but how many of these people were going to die from their ailment they already had from the other mitigating factors,
mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like it came through and just wiped out a bunch of healthy 20 somethings, that would be very disturbing. That would be a lockdown, everybody, hide away type of situation. Instead, it took a lot of very sick, and this is not to diminish life at all. And maybe we'll just edit this out of the show. I don't know. But it's just there is nothing is certain. Nothing is ever certain. Everything is done in payoffs or trade offs. You can't guarantee anything. So to say that for sure the lockdowns worked, I don't think we're ever going to actually be able to find out. We have states and countries that didn't do that, and they're technically, some of them are, as far as I know, they're all better off than the ones that did do it. So that's I just can't get over that part of the data.
Yeah.
I'm not, yeah. But it's one of those things where you're looking at a health crisis, you're looking at the potentials, and what the hell are you supposed to do as a world leader? Like, I mean, you got to follow the experts for as long as it makes sense. But I definitely think we push this past.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a couple of people who lost their businesses and livelihoods, and now they're literally living on unemployment still because their
Yeah.
businesses
And they're
shut
not
down
going to
on them,
reopen.
and they're not going to be able to reopen their business, and they're trying to figure out what to do next because they know they're going to get pushed off of unemployment eventually.
Yeah.
And it's already happening where they're trying to reel back and push people off. I mean, they're trying to fish out fraud, which makes sense, but it makes the people who deserve it a little antsy. And yeah, there are lots of jobs out there, but it's also the fact that when you've been doing something for 20, 30 years, and then you lose it because of this type of stuff, what are you supposed to do? If you're not really ready to retire, what are
Can't
you
just
supposed to
flip a
do?
switch and automatically find something else. I mean, it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. So I look at the real world human cost, and I feel like we shot ourselves in the foot with the trade-off, and I don't know if we'll ever come back. And honestly, crap's really going to hit the fan when a lot of the bans on like rent and stuff are lifted and mortgages, when suddenly people have to start paying their mortgages and have to start paying their rent, because there are a lot of people who just have been able to make it through because they didn't pay those things.
Absolutely.
So I know if I wasn't doing that, that would save my budget. That's like, my rent is like a third of my budget, which is a little high, but that's because we actually keep all of our other costs low. It's not because so I don't know. I just think there's a huge, huge financial crisis coming, and I just don't. I get a little negative on it because I don't necessarily see a way out of it this time, but that's just my limited knowledge. And people who I know who are usually optimistic are also kind of down on it this time. So we'll see what happens.
Well, we'll finally get into the movie now. Shutter
Right?
Island.
Oh, thank God, because I I'm stuck on Sound of Music because I've been trying to get those videos uploaded
you're
and
working
stuff
on
today.
very hard on that today.
So in my mind, I thought we were going to go through from this depressing talk into trying to talk about Sound of Music.
We're just going to more depressing talk.
But more depressing talk, which is fine. Which is great, actually. This is perfect because we started depressing and we're getting depressing now, and it's just going to be a crappy show. I'm sorry if you end up depressed after this. Go and
go
get high or something.
Go frolic in a field in a grass field. Wave your arms around like Julie Andrews and Sound of Music in the sunshine.
Go watch Sound of Music. Make your life better. Oof. So you want to read a description of what this movie is supposedly about?
I'll give you some background here. Released February 19, 2010. Written by Laeta Kalogridis. Based on the I know I'm probably not saying that right, but I'm gonna go with it. It's Kalogridis. Calogridis.
Wow.
That was what the screenplay
Yeah, I
was
have
written
no
by.
idea. I didn't even look it up.
They wrote the screenplay. Okay,
Oh, who wrote the
that
book?
was based on a novel by Dennis Lehane. Lehane.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's easier to just to
yeah.
say.
Leita wrote the. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, Leita. That's a female. That's a woman. Wrote the screenplay for this, but then Dennis Lehane wrote the novel it was based on, and it was directed by Martin Scorsese. It did not get any nominations, which is surprising to me. You probably don't think so, but I think it's very surprising. I
I
think it's
don't think
very
so.
surprising. No nominations. Got robbed, obviously, of any nominations.
So
And
robbed. Terribly robbed.
I will say this. However, it is one of the top-rated movies on IMDb. It is in the
It
top
is. I
top
did notice
250,
that.
number 157, with an 8.2 out of 10 rating from 1.16 million reviews. So people like this movie. Obviously, people generally
People are stupid.
people like this movie, and there's a very good and valid reason for that, and I'll get into that in a second. But this it also grossed 294.8 million on worldwide on an $80 million budget, so it did well at the box office as well. But the synopsis basically is set in 1954. A U.S. Marshal, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, investigates the disappearance of a murderer who escaped from a mental hospital for the criminally insane. So that's where this kind of this premise is all surrounded upon. He's a U.S. Marshal. He goes to this island called Shutter Island to try to track down this woman who escaped. Yeah, and I will say this right off the bat. There are many, we've said this before in the podcast, there are many Oscar-worthy performances that we think DiCaprio should have gotten nominated or won for before he finally won for The Revenant in 2015. This is one of those movies. He did not even get nominated for this movie. Forget winning. He didn't even get nominated. And I think that is a tragedy because he is terrific in this movie. He is.
I actually did look up the
Did you?
Oscars
Okay.
for that year, and I did. I think he just got bested. That was a rough
something
year.
I was going to do.
Dallas Buyers
I was
Club.
going to look up who other
Dallas Buyers Club was the one that like swept the Oscars that year. Like, so Jared Leto took Best Supporting Actor, and Matthew McConaughey got Best Actor, and they got the Best Film, and so I don't know. I'm always, people talk about Oscar snubs and things like that.
Always someone better, but
honestly, I really feel like just because the system they have for the Oscars, which is actually a system that I personally feel we might want to use for voting in the U.S. Completely other topic we could talk about another time. But just the system they have for voting for the Oscars, to me, I don't really think anyone ever gets snubbed. I just think that they get bested. I really do. People talk about the years, like Will Smith is another one who's been snubbed for actors. And I'm like, yeah, but the 2 times he got nominated, he got beat by Denzel Washington and Forrest Whitaker. So it's not like they were being against a black man getting an Oscar. He just had, the King of Scotland and Training Day kicking his butt,
right.
So, so I just don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But
I will say this was also the second movie in 2010 where DiCaprio played a psychologically tortured character. The other one being Inception. Yep.
Inception.
Same year.
Yep.
It's a kind of a very
which he did get nominated for Inception,
did not
he?
get nominated for Inception.
No.
So double whammy there. He should have got nominated for both, in my opinion. But what does my opinion matter?
You are a DiCaprio fan.
I kind of am. I just think he's terrific in both movies, but this one in particular, both really though he did tremendous. This spoiler warning. This is all straight up spoilers. We said this, but I'm going to.
We are
going to get into spoilers here, so here's your warning. I think that his highlight scene, acting moment in this scene, is whenever he finds his children dead in the lake. His reaction to that, that was just so raw and powerful and just straight up.
Man, you just jumped right to the end.
I wanted to point out. That's why I did spoiler warning. I wanted to point that out right away. I think that's his best scene in the movie. It's just so well done by him.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll get into some of my pros for it, and then I'll let you tear it apart, or attempt to tear
Tear
it
it
apart, I
apart.
should say. You're not going to get very far, I don't think.
Eh,
So
eh.
for a 2-hour, 18-minute movie, this is a very well-paced movie. I think it's very well-paced, very engrossing, keeps you on the edge of your seat the whole time. There's obviously a lot of mystery that surrounds it, so you're invested in the story and in the characters. There's really not a dull moment in it. You don't, because as a viewer, you don't really know who to trust, because we're at this mental hospital where you really, you don't know, you literally don't know what's going to happen here. And there's a sense of mystery and
Mhm.
intrigue that it's retained all throughout the film to the very end. And because the story also shifts from mystery surrounding a woman's disappearance to a mystery surrounding who is this guy, who is DiCaprio's character. He's trying to find. He eventually moves into who is this guy, Um,
Mhm.
and it's a movie that it warrants multiple viewings, because at the very end, once you find out, everything, like, you just wanna, in my opinion, you just want to go back and rewatch it all again, and just to see what you missed, and to see how
Mhm.
did we get from point A to point B at the very end? How did we get from there to here? And all the clues, which I'll get into here in a second, all the foreshadowing that the Scorsese also put in this movie is just very incredible. There's so much detail in this movie that he went into to foreshadow who DiCaprio was the entire time. But yeah, in the beginning of the movie, you really want to side with Teddy, because you want to trust that he's sane, that he has a sanity. But as the story goes on, you start to really doubt his sanity, and your preconceived notions of who his character is, and you kind of track and you follow along with him. But here I want to get into some instances that foreshadow the film's ending. Are you ready?
No, go for it.
Buckle in here. This is it's so good. It's so exciting to me. So very beginning, when they get on the island, he says there's an electrified perimeter, and Teddy says, so Teddy is DiCaprio here. He says, I've seen something like this before. So there's one clue. He knows about this fence. Why does he know about this? Where has he seen it before? Okay. Um, and there's a woman who gives him the hush gesture as he walks in, and the patients in general acknowledge Teddy, but they don't acknowledge Mark Ruffalo's character Chuck. They only wave or make hand gestures or smile at Teddy. And obviously the reason for this is because he's a patient there. They've seen him around
Mhm.
before, they know who
Mhm.
he is. Whereas Chuck, not so much. He's a doctor there, but they would have seen Teddy a lot more around as a patient than they would have with Chuck's character. Another telling moment is
Mhm.
whenever Teddy and Chuck are ordered to hand over their guns. Chuck struggles to be able to physically remove his gun from his holster, and he struggles for several seconds with it, and then he eventually just hands over the gun and the whole holster to the guard. So that's very telling of, oh,
Mhm.
okay, this guy clearly doesn't handle a gun very often. What's going on here? Right? Right?
No, you see, I thought that was funny because I probably would have just handed the whole
Oh,
holster over as well. If I had a holster the way he did, on where he had it in his pants, I think I would have
yeah.
just done the same
Well,
thing because having used the holster like that, it just makes sense to just take the whole thing out rather than leaving that thing in your pants being in
yeah.
the way. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's just initially when I saw it, I dismissed it as just a humorous moment in the movie. I'm like, okay, they're trying to be a little, funny here,
yeah,
introduce a little comedy into this dark, depressing, subject matter here that we're dealing with. But no, there's actually a purpose for it here. Another scene, and just a fantastic scene when Teddy is interviewing the female patient. I believe her name is Bridget. Whenever
hmm
he acts here, or Teddy talks about Dr. Sheehan, who in actual
hmm
reality is,
yeah.
she
She
looks she
looks over
glances
him.
over at Mark Ruffalo's character Chuck, because Chuck is Dr. Sheehan. Just, it's very quick. Her eyes just glance over him because she was told obviously beforehand to not give away who he actually is, but her first instinct is to glance over at Dr. Sheehan.
Did you did you catch the guard thing in that room
Yes,
too?
I was getting to that right now. There's a shot or two shots in the background of her. There is a guard, in the background of the frame of her, and there's also a guard in the background of Teddy, and that's kind of
Hmm.
signifies and implies that these guards are looking, they're guarding these patients, and he's a patient and she's a
Hmm.
patient, but there's not a guard,
But there's no
no
car.
guard in the
Yeah.
background of Chuck, is there? No. And
Yep.
it's just like,
Nope. There's not.
just such clever, just so well crafted here by Scorsese to put characters in certain places in the frame. Um, he does this throughout the entire movie with characters, with objects, through the cinematography, through editing. There's also a shot where what do I want here? Oh, then she also writes "run" on the notepad because she's trying to basically tell him to get out while he can, because she knows this is his only chance to get
Hmm.
out is right now when he's Teddy. Um, Later on, Teddy gets physical with a patient named Peter by grabbing his wrist, and at that point, Chuck pulls Teddy back to his seat with his left hand, while with his right hand,
Hmm.
he's seen ordering the mental institution staff to bring Peter back to the ward. So just a little, again,
Hmm.
something very small, kind of subtle, very subtle, but also speaks
Hmm.
to who Chuck is in real life, in reality. Another thing is there's a flashback with Teddy's wife, that shows a wound in her stomach whenever she died in a house fire. So where did that wound come from? We
Hmm.
find out in the end of the movie. One of the
Yep.
patients tells Teddy that, quote, "you're a rat in a maze," and he ends up seeing a bunch of rats next to the lighthouse when he's trying to swim to get to the lighthouse.
Hmm.
And another scene is whenever Teddy is looking for Rachel Solando, the guards in the scene look very, very bored, and they're just kind of standing around. And obviously, the reason
Yeah.
for that
Yep.
is they know
There's
there's
no
nowhere
one
to
to
look
look
for her.
for.
They have no motivation to search for a made up a person, And uh, yeah, just so much attention to detail here in this movie that foreshadow Teddy's true identity, he's Andrew Latis. He's the guy who he believes murdered his wife. He was committed arsony. Yeah, I can't say that word.
Arson.
Arson, just
No,
arson.
arson. Just
Okay,
arson.
he
Yep.
committed arson and burned their apartment down with her inside. Um, but yeah, basically, yeah, your whole perspective shifts by the movie's end, and it's all set up so beautifully by all these little hints here and there that are sprinkled throughout the movie by the cinematography and editing.
There's a lot
There
of
are.
hints. A
There
lot
are.
of
And I'm
hints.
sure one of your things
Too many hints.
is I guessed this in the first 5 minutes of the movie, because you are one of the best guessers of any twist of any movie that ever happened. You've guessed The Usual Suspects. I'm sure you guessed The Sixth Sense. I'm sure you've guessed literally every big twist in any movie. I know you're one of the best.
And I did not guess
Okay.
Sixth Sense, but I mean, but I was a kid when that
Okay,
movie
so
came
you
out. Like
have
I
kind
was
of an
only like
excuse there.
I was
Yes.
young.
Yes. So, yeah. Anyway, some other quick things I wanted to note was there's some motifs, which, if anyone's unfamiliar, motif is just a recurrent element that happens in a movie,
Mhm.
with water and fire. With water,
Yeah.
Teddy has an aversion to water throughout the entire movie. He gets seasick on the boat on the way there in the beginning of the movie. He
Hmm.
There's another scene where with Bridget, that female patient we were talking about earlier, that she actually drinks an invisible glass of water, and then puts it down, and there's the
Hmm.
glass, but it's invisible because the invisible shot was from his perspective, and
Yep.
it's basically a continuity error was put into the movie intentionally to show you Teddy's perspective. Just
Well, did you catch the continuity around the boat?
um,
The
I don't think so.
Mark Ruffalo's lines are dubbed over.
Okay,
It doesn't match his lips
I did not notice that.
right at the
No.
beginning.
I'll have to look at that.
Yeah.
I did not catch that one. Yeah, there's continuity errors, really, several spaces, several parts in this movie, and that's all to, again, communicate that Teddy's not who he actually thinks he is. But yeah, water. Back to water. Water is a reflection of Teddy's actual reality. His wife drowned his children, and so that reality he's trying to block out from his life. And so, but as the film
Hmm.
progresses, he's constantly put into situations where he has to encounter, interact with water, whether it's rain, whether it's jumping into water to get it to the lighthouse type of thing, and it all correlates to his gradual shift in identity throughout the movie. Um, but the other motif is fire, and fire is present in all of his hallucinations. He, with Andrew Latis
Hmm.
sitting by the fire, with Rachel Solando in the cave, which that whole conversation, the
Hmm.
fire is very prominent in the reverse shots. It takes up
Yep.
the majority of the
Yeah.
frame. You can barely actually see their faces because the fire is so much in the way.
Hmm.
Fire is a reflection of Andrew's fantasy that he's trying to live out. Because that's what he believes. How his wife actually died was in the fire, and uh,
Hmm.
so fire plays a part.
And the
Yes,
matches.
there's
Um, there's that one guy, I forget his name,
George
who's talking
Noyce.
to him. George
Yeah.
Noyce, yeah. So he's talking to George Noyce, and he keeps lighting the matches, and basically George Noyce is just telling him straight
Mm-hmm.
up truth. But and that's why the matches keep going out, and he has to keep doing it because he's putting up the matches basically to like cover up and say, "Hey, this is my reality. I'm holding out my reality to
Yeah.
hide it." But it keeps going out because George Noyce is just spitting straight
Right.
truth to him.
And it's only when the match comes back up into frame, that he starts seeing hallucinations again. He sees Rachel, or he thinks is Rachel, in the prison
Hmm.
cell again.
Yeah.
It's just so good. And I wanted to point out these two YouTube video essays because there's so many video essays on this movie. Two essays I
Hmm.
wanted to point out for any viewers who are further interested in what all happens in this movie and how much foreshadowing is used through cinematography and editing and everything. One is titled Shutter Island: Why Perspective is Everything, and it's by the channel
Hmm.
Storytellers. And
I think I did see that
yeah, the
one.
other one I wanted to point out was it's called Shutter Island Dash Notice the Details by Tyler Mowry. They're pretty short video essays. I
Hmm.
think one's 6 minutes, one's 8 minutes, so they're pretty short, but they're very insightful into just how much detail went into this movie.
Hmm.
Um, but Yeah, there's just so much, so much detail. I love when filmmakers put that amount of detail and work and effort into a movie to really engross you in the story and make you want to rewatch the movie right after the credits roll.
Yeah.
But all right, let's hear it. What's wrong with this movie?
Well, I'm glad you already brought up how good I am at
Yes, I
predicting
was on.
movie plots. This movie is literally the crown jewel in my prediction of movie plots. Because my buddy was like, "You got to see this movie. You have to see it." I haven't seen it yet. Everyone tells me it's great. We got to see it. So I go over to his house to watch this, but I've been working. I am dead tired. I don't really want to watch a movie. So we're sitting there and we're in the room with Ben Kingsley, the first scene where they're just introducing
Yeah.
everything. And I look over at my buddy and I go, "Dude, Leonardo DiCaprio's the mental patient. This is all just a big hallucination. He's not actually who he thinks he is. He's the mental patient." And I roll over and I went to
Oh.
sleep. I get woken up with him
Oh,
beating on me, being like, "How the hell did
I'm
you
sure.
know? How did you know?" He was so mad at me. "Why did you tell me that? You ruined the whole movie." And I was just like, "What?" I was like, "Dude, I was kind of messing with you. I mean, I saw a couple
Yeah.
clues that it was out there, but
Oh man, you're just the worst.
man." So I swung for the fences on that
You
one,
hit a
and
home.
like Babe Ruth pointing,
You
I
hit a
hit a home
grand
run.
slam. You just.
Yeah. Knocked it out of the park. So that one was like, I mean, and that's so
Yeah,
early in the
that's
movie too.
very early.
Like that is stupid early in the movie that I predicted that. So like you said, like five
Yeah.
minutes in, and yeah. So for me, if it was another filmmaker, I'd probably give it a
Mhm.
pass. But to me, the fact that it's Martin
One
Scorsese
of the best.
and it's one of the best, and it's that predictable, I don't know. I feel like either he was. I mean, some people say that maybe he wasn't trying to hide it at all, but just get you to question whether or not the guy's like trying to get you to believe maybe he's
Right.
actually
I mean,
right
that's
and that he's
one of
like
the
a
other arguments
mark.
I was looking at people had. Some people actually believe that maybe he is right. Maybe they are doing these experiments, these Nazi type experiments on these on these patients, and so maybe
Hmm.
he is right, and they're just trying to convince him that he's crazy the entire movie, but he's actually in the right the entire time.
But I feel like that doesn't actually work because the movie just so clearly, as you just said,
Yeah.
hammers home that this is all set up. He's a mental patient, and you see the mental patients questioning, like, where's Andrew? Not Noyce. Oh, and where's
Yeah.
Andrew Latis? Have you heard of Andrew Latis? Have you met it? Until it's just like, it's
Mm-hmm.
you, dude. It's you. Like they're not saying it, but like, are you kidding me? You're joking? Are you
Yeah.
messing with me? And because they know it's him, and the doctor. If you watch Mark Ruffalo, the entire time he's clearly acting as a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
not a cop. He's there trying to help his patient, his friend, his or this person who's been under his care for a long time. So for me, I just feel like the movie's too terribly predictable. I feel like it's a little derivative of twists that we have seen done over and over again, like Memento and things like that, where this has been done before. Is the guy actually crazy? Psycho, things like that. This has been done
Mm-hmm.
forever. It's not new. So to try and do this new thing in this era, 2010, I don't know. That to me, it just made it a little bit eh as far as the quality of the movie. And then the third thing was the fact that this movie gets lauded for its portrayal of mental
Mm.
illness.
I was thinking that may have been the other thing you were gonna comment on. Go,
Because
yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah. I have some. Yeah.
because
Go ahead.
I don't feel like that's accurate though. Like because these are people who are struggling with mental illness to a level of criminal
Right.
insanity, okay, where they have experienced trauma and gone through such horrible things that the man killed his wife because his wife killed his kids. And honestly, yeah, he goes insane because he's trying to block out what he did, but he did that logically. You know what I mean? Like not as like maliciously, but she asked him to kill
Hmm.
him, to kill her. She literally
To
says,
set me free. He says some of this.
"Yeah, set me free."
Yeah.
That's the line. Set me free. Set me free, and he does. So, I mean, this is just such an extreme level. Like he talks about these people being murderers. Yes, feel for the struggle and the trauma that these people have had. But to me, that's not an accurate portrayal of what most people struggle with mental illness. Because the average person struggling with mental illness is not going to be a murderer. They're not going to be someone who drowns their children, but they still need help. They're your friend who's not getting out of bed and you just think they're a super introvert. And it's like, no, they're clinically depressed, but they've probably never been clinically diagnosed. And you're like, well, if you need any help, just let me know. Someone who's struggling with depression ain't going to ask for help. You need to like push yourself into that person's life and thrust the help upon them because they don't know what to do to get
Mm-hmm.
help. They can't, they don't even know how to reach out. And even being someone who has struggled with depression and having a wife who's dealt with that, it's hard for us to deal with each other's depressions when we have our little like bouts. She doesn't necessarily see it in me. I don't necessarily see it in her. Like we end up going into our own little modes of like, oh, I'm taking care of the kids because she's in a funk or whatever. So it's just this thing of like, I just don't feel like it is as marvelous of a portrayal of mental illness as it has been given
Yeah.
credit for.
I mean, I feel like
So those
yeah.
are just
I mean, they
go ahead.
they they say in the very beginning, these aren't your ordinary mental patients. These are dangerous people.
Hmm.
So I feel like yeah.
Well, they say that, but that line actually comes from Leonardo DiCaprio. He's the one being like, "These aren't your ordinary patients. These are murderers. They're rapists. They're
Hmm.
killers. They should be behind bars. Like he's talking whereas Ben Kingsley's character is supposed to be the compassionate one who's trying to draw out that no, they need to be empathized with, they need to be taken care of, otherwise, these horrible things are going to be done to them where they're lobotomized, which was an accurate
Yes,
truth
I
in the
actually
50s.
I
That was
actually did some
accurate.
research on lobotomies because I was not very well versed because I know that they had actually happened, but I wasn't sure what the actual history was on those, and I was pretty startled by what I found that they were a very
Hmm.
common thing that was done in the 40s and 50s around in the U.S.
Yeah.
It was estimated about 40,000 lobotomies were done in the U.S., which is
Hmm.
pretty
Yeah.
startling. John F.
Yeah,
I,
it's
I
messed
saw
up.
one, the one famous example was John F. Kennedy's sister, Rosemary Kennedy, had a lobotomy at age 23, and she had to be
Hmm.
institutionalized the rest of her life. And the reason why she was lobotomized was because she had, some mental illness leading up to that, and her father, I believe, scheduled a lobotomy for her because at that time, if you had a severe mental illness, that was viewed as, even though it was kind of the whole procedure was controversial from the outset, from what I read, it was like a common form
Hmm.
of this. Okay, well, this is something that may fix, that. But obviously, the lobotomies, they rob you of your personality, they rob you of your intellect, and make you this. Uh,
They were just following the
yeah,
science.
it's just. It was just startling what I found. I was like, wow, this is something people actually. This was a prevalent thing that was done in the 40s and 50s. I just couldn't. Obviously, now it's regarded as a very barbaric. It's illegal, and everything. But back then, it
Yeah.
was not the case.
Yeah, and I've worked with people with developmental disabilities I did that for about a decade. Um, and I did it in four different um, companies. Um, and every time you change a company, they put you through this orientation where they talk about the history of people with developmental disabilities and how they were put side by side with people. They were considered the same thing as someone with mental illness and treated the same way. So back then, they were given lobotomies, they were sterilized, they were, just treated like terrible, terrible people, and then they were thrown into these institutions, which that institution in that movie didn't actually look that bad, but half the times these were literally just large rooms where they just sat
Mhm.
around, barely had any clothes on because they didn't have enough orderlies. They showed the amount of staff at that place, and I was shocked for an island facility. They have that much
Yeah,
staff there. I don't know if that's actually accurate to what they would have been able to have back in
54. Yeah,
1954. So, yeah, it's just so my critique of it doesn't necessarily come from a place of just ignorance on this. It's literally like I've experienced this, I've seen things, I know a lot about both sides of that, and I just feel like it's not necessarily as accurate of a portrayal. I do like obviously the message of having empathy for people with developmental disability, not developmental disabilities, having empathy for people with mental illness is that's something that we need to have. That's something that especially as Christians we need to have because a lot of churches are places propagating the wrong information still. They don't let people get counseling. They don't want to have psychiatrists. They don't want people on meds. Um, Not most of them that I deal with now are fine with that stuff, but there still are denominations that struggle with
yeah,
that stuff. And I don't know. I just feel like, yeah, so that is good, but I don't feel like this movie accurately portrays the vast majority of what you deal with when you're dealing with someone with mental illness.
I see.
I mean, obviously, having those types of hallucinations, having those types of problems, where you're literally living in an alternate reality, like that much of an alternate reality, well, then, yeah, you kind of need to be in some facility to be taken
Yeah,
care of,
yeah.
because if he was living that out in the streets, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he could be, he'd hurt
Right.
someone. Whereas what you have are people with schizophrenia who are able to take their meds and they'll hear when someone says they're hearing voices, they're not hearing like someone in their brain going, "Hey, you need to go kill that thing or start fires." That's not what they're hearing. It's like hearing a conversation in another room when there's no one around.
Mm-hmm.
It's like constantly thinking you're hearing something. or seeing something out of the corner of your eye all the time, like something moving. Those are the shadows or the things that people see. And I just think, I don't know, I haven't seen, and hey, if you have, let me know about it in the comments below. I haven't seen a good portrayal of mental illness in film yet. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally don't feel I have. Not the typical stuff that people deal with. And I guess what I'm saying by typical and have to deal with, what I mean by that is that these people still have to live in the community with everybody and go and work with people who don't have those problems.
Yeah.
So not someone who's in an institution, not someone who, is put away or has killed someone and has been locked away, but like the average person who is still out there on the streets just trying to get by. Like we're all trying to
Yeah.
get by,
So basically,
but has this extra
your
problem.
argument is that the movie portrays it as if the majority of mentally ill people are like the people that are on this island. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Kind of, but not really, because I know they're not saying that, but I feel like people might come away
Yeah,
from it
with that
with that idea of
generalization.
like, oh, that generalization, because people are mainly because it's being praised as a good representation for people dealing with mental illness. And it's like, well,
Yeah.
no, maybe it's good way to deal with people who have gone criminally insane,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think I would say this is a good representation of how to deal with people who struggle with day-to-day mental
Right.
illness.
Okay. I can see that.
So for me, it is the fact that I find it terribly predictable and derivative from one of the most brilliant filmmakers of our time, you know. So I'm just like, ugh, did you phone it in? I mean, it's well crafted.
It
It's
is
well
very well
shot. You
shot,
know what I
very
mean?
direct, well
The purpose behind all those little glitches that he has throughout the movie is like
Yeah.
amazing. They're not continuity errors. They're purposely done continuity errors. And I love that part of it. Um, I like how the movie progresses with color scheme as well. Because it starts off dark and gloomy, and every time he has one of his dreams or hallucinations, it's bright, beautiful, colorful.
Hmm.
And as the movie progresses, as he comes closer to reality, it gets brighter and more colorful.
Yeah.
So in this, they're showing the hope of reality, the hope of living in reality. And I think that's a good thing to have. But there's other points where I just find it
Hmm.
derivative.
Yeah.
So it's a well crafted story and movie, but if it was from someone else,
I
I would have been
mean,
like, wow, that
in
did
his
good, But to me,
yeah.
Scorsese,
I
it's
mean,
like, come on, man,
in
you're
his defense,
better.
he didn't write it. It was based on a book. Scorsese just directed.
Yeah, he didn't
So,
write it.
um, but yeah, I just like when I texted you last night when I was like, this movie is profound. I was kind of referring to the fact that the last line of the movie where DiCaprio
Hmm.
says, which would be worse, to live as a monster or to die as a good man? I just think that's a great way to end the movie, and something a line that sticks with you long after the credits are done and rolling, and just yeah, a very profound statement right there.
Yeah.
Because
The thing that also does, because it leaves a lot of
yeah,
ambiguity
because then it
in how it's ending. So he's sitting there and they're like, oh no, he's relapsed. He's back to the thing. But maybe he's faking that so that they'll lobotomize him so he doesn't have to live
yes,
with it.
I that's my interpretation. Is that because you notice when he gets up and leaves, she and Mark Ruffalo sitting on the steps. Mark Ruffalo calls after him. He calls him Teddy, but he doesn't even DiCaprio doesn't even turn back at him. He doesn't even acknowledge the name at all. He
Yeah.
doesn't turn his head back. He just keeps on walking. And to me, that says straight up, he's not going. He doesn't. He's not Teddy. He knows he's Andrew Latus.
Yeah, he's not Teddy. He's Andrew.
He's not going to answer
And
to
he's
Teddy. Um,
and he's gonna let
yeah,
them. mess his brain up so
And
they don't have to deal
yeah,
with it
he
anymore.
can't live with himself as a monster anymore. And he knows what he did. He knows he didn't get his wife help when she needed help, and he's guilt ridden by it, by his wife and his children's deaths, and doesn't want it's like I said, it's very dark, very dark, very
Gloomy.
depressing, but it's like I said,
Yeah.
so well crafted, I think, and profound in many ways, and one that just leaves you thinking. And I love movies that leave you thinking. I'm not so much a fan of the movies
Yeah.
where you just, when the credits are done, you're like, okay, I'm done. I'm not gonna think about this movie ever again. But this is one that's really sticks with you, and I think that's the hallmark of a
Yeah.
good movie, is one that will stick with you. It doesn't just leave your brain the second it's done. So yeah,
Yeah. I'm also glad they didn't really go with the horror vibe of it. Like everyone makes it seem like it's such a thriller, but I don't really.
yeah. There's definitely
They
there's some jump scares in it. It has a very, I think I mention this. This movie is very atmospheric. There is such a strong and
mhm.
potent atmosphere about this movie. And that's another reason why I love it so much. Um,
Yeah. So I mean, it nails that stuff, but I'm glad it didn't go down the path of trying to be more
mm,
horror or even more
yeah.
grotesque because they could have done a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
stuff with that facility they had
And I
there.
also like the movie incorporated World War II into it, because I'm kind of a World War II, like I love the history of World War II and everything. And for some reason I had forgotten. It had been a while since I seen this movie. And I rewatched, I'm like, wow, they actually incorporate real events.
Yeah.
World War II, the liberation of the Dachau concentration camp, and the shooting of the Nazi
Mhm.
soldiers there on, I think it was April 29, 1945 is what I found, that actual event. And that's one of the keystone events from Teddy's past. And yeah, I love that they incorporated that into the film as well. Some actual history there.
So that were those soldiers convicted or tried or did they?
Oh no, they were straight up shot there.
Do you
They
know
were
what
straight
happened
up
there?
shot. I mean,
No, no, yeah, no, no. I know the
yeah.
Nazi ones were. Was there anything that happened to the American soldiers for
I
that?
don't know that offhand. I
I mean, I would
Yeah, I
assume
don't
not,
think
but
so, but I don't know 100% for sure. Yeah, I highly doubt it.
World War II's a
It was
crazy
a very
subject. I accidentally got into talking about that with my 6 year old the
oh
one day, and I was like, "How did
oh
I end up into
man,
this conversation?"
that is a bit dicey there.
Because he started, how did we get in there? Oh, we were talking about movies and ratings, and he learned that there's different rated
Right.
movies. Well, what's in an R-rated movie? Because he knows he's seen
Hmm.
PG-13. He's seen Iron Man and stuff
Yeah.
like that. He knows, he can watch anything that's PG and G because that's where we're limited on the apps and stuff. Um, well, what's in an R-rated movie? What kind of things? Who watches R-rated movies? He's like, does mommy watch R-rated movies? And the sad thing was, I was like the only person in his life who actually watches R-rated movies was his
Oh
father, because my wife isn't into anything
yeah.
like that, and a lot of the people I know as Christians, they just don't watch
Yeah.
R-rated movies for the fact that it's R-rated. Whereas I'm sitting here being like, they tell very important
Hmm.
things. They tell about the darker things that we need to deal with, like World War II and things like that. And of course, Deadpool. So how can you not
Yeah.
watch R-rated movies when
Right.
you have
Right.
Deadpool?
Of course.
Um, and obviously, Passion of the
Hmm.
Christ, stuff like that. So you need that R rating so you have the freedom to tell these types of stories that are just gruesome and brutal. And yeah, he got stuck on, well, what kind of things are in R rated movies? And I said, oh, a lot of times they're war movies, very violent things. Sometimes, there's other adult content that's in these
Yeah.
movies that, kids can't see yet. He's like, well, what kind of war movies? I said, stuff from like World War II and things like that. And he goes, what's World War
Oh,
II?
that's a loaded question
And I
there.
go, and
Let me get back to
I
you
was like,
on.
holy crap! How did I get into this
Oh,
conversation with a 6 year old? Am I an idiot right now?
wow.
Uh,
That's
but yeah, so I mean, I told them a very PG, low.
a
Well, there
bad
was
guy.
a war that happened 80 years ago or 75 years ago. And several countries got together and decided that they wanted to take over other countries, and they did take over a lot of countries, and then a bunch of other countries grouped together and decided they were going to fight
Mhm.
them. So they called it the World War because pretty much every country was involved in this war
Right.
somehow, you know. And he was like, "Oh, okay." So, oh my gosh, I was thinking on that one. Unfortunately, we were in the car. I was in the
Hmm.
driver's seat, and he was in the back seat, so I had time to like
Process and yeah.
think it over and mull it over before. It's not like we're sitting in the
Right.
living room and he's on my lap looking at me
Yeah.
like, "What's that, Dad?"
Oh man. Wow.
So yeah,
And now when he's 10, 10, 15 years from now, when he's all grown up and watching our podcast, he'll be able to listen to this and get your reaction to his question.
he, my wife will. I found out the other day that my wife sometimes puts my podcast on for them because they want to hear Daddy's
Oh.
voice. So they've played certain, like, she goes like
Oh
Finding Nemo
yes.
or one of those ones that we've done that are younger
Yes.
kids, more kid friendly movies, and they would hear Daddy's voice, and I was just like, oh, I had no idea that she
That's
did that.
cool.
But I'm like, okay, that's actually cool. I'm really glad that I'm recording
Yeah.
these now.
Got your voice on just a tap
And
away.
gotta
Got your voice.
make sure I don't share too many
Right.
embarrassing stories, because that's one thing that always bothered me was parents telling embarrassing stories for no
Mm-hmm.
reason. So I try to make sure that they're like good stories in a good light.
Yeah. Nice. Nice.
Yeah. So that
That
is Shutter
Shutter
Island, our
Island.
little debate
Yeah.
about it.
Was there anything else I wanted to say? I didn't have a whole.
Oh, do you have
I
some
do have a
trivia?
little bit. Just a couple things. A lot of it I had eliminated when I talked about the stuff that was already in it, like all the foreshadowing moments and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Um, One thing that I did find really interesting was the film does not have an original score. All the music in this movie is a combination of classical and modern classical music, which is very unusual.
Yes, it
Very, very
is.
unusual.
Yeah.
You very rarely see that.
Because I remember like the one song actually it's one of those out of an era songs. Like it's an older song that was developed in 1880 something, but it was
Mm,
lost and they didn't discover it till the 1960s
okay.
again. But they have the song in the movie, which I was like, so that's a continuity error, but not really. Because just because something's lost to the
Right.
public doesn't mean somebody doesn't have it sitting somewhere on their shelf as a record that they enjoy
Yeah.
playing, you know?
They
So,
also used the song "On the Nature of Daylight" by Max Richter, which I love
mhm.
that theme. It was also in the movie Arrival. It's been in a lot of movies, but it's also in the movie Arrival,
Mm,
and its use in Arrival actually disqualified Arrival from original score. Otherwise, Arrival, because it was a big Oscar contender that year, it most likely would have gotten the original
yeah,
score
yeah.
nomination. But they used that song in Arrival as well. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, and I love that theme on the nature of daylight. But let's see, what else did I have? The title itself, Shutter Island, is an anagram. They in the end of the movie they show you how Andrew
Yeah.
Latis is an actual anagram of Teddy Daniels and all these anagrams.
Hmm.
Shutter Island is an anagram of truths and lies, and also an anagram of the
Hmm.
words truths and denials. So that's pretty cool.
Hmm.
Um, the $40.2 million opening weekend in the U.S. was a career best for Scorsese, and it went on to gross $293 million worldwide, which was the highest of his career. But it was later surpassed by Wolf of Wall Street a couple years later with $392 million.
Wow, that movie was long
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Wolf of Wall Street was
Um,
real long.
and this
Did you
I
see
have
Wolf of Wall
not
Street?
actually. Only like a few snippets.
Don't.
Yeah, I have not actually. I know it holds the record of F words in a single movie. It's like almost an F word
Yeah,
every.
beat 8
Yeah,
Mile.
it's almost like every 4 seconds or something like that. There's an F word or something like yeah, something crazy number like that. I think it has over 400 or so, or almost 500 maybe. I forget. It's
Something.
a
Yeah,
crazy
it's
amount.
crazy.
It holds the Guinness World Record for number of F bombs in a feature length movie. I know that, and just some of the subject matter. Like I know it's a very heavy movie, shall we say?
Yeah, I saw it when I was at Messiah, and pretty much I would watch anything that was kind of recommended at
Hmm.
that time because we were film students, and you're supposed to be able to watch this stuff and talk about it. And yeah, I really don't see a point in recommending
Yeah,
that movie to
yeah.
anybody.
This was the fourth time that Scorsese and DiCaprio had worked on a movie together. They had previously done Gangs of New York in 2002, The Aviator in
Hmm.
2004, The Departed in 2006, which we did a
Departed. Yeah,
podcast
we
on,
talked about, yes.
and then The Wolf of Wall Street they did later as well. So they've done five, I believe, five movies now together. So
Yeah, and he had to break away from Scorsese because he was like, dude, you're not getting me my
yeah,
Oscar. I'm going to go talk to,
what's
who was it, Alfonso
no,
Cuarón?
Alejandro Inarritu, I believe. Yeah,
Okay, that's it. Alejandro Inarritu.
to finally get his Oscar.
Yeah, I'm going to go talk to this other dude, get
Yeah,
my
yeah.
Oscar, man.
I've been here doing this too long with you. I need this at some point here. The other thing I was going to say was this was actually shot. They mentioned the movie that Shutter Island is in the Boston Harbor, and it was actually shot in Boston Harbor on an island called Pedox Island. So the movie was actually shot where the characters say they actually are, which is kind of a rare thing for a movie. Usually you don't actually
Yeah.
shoot in the location people actually say they are. And yeah, there's some great aerial shots and just on location shooting in Massachusetts here. But yeah, that's all the trivia I had for the movie. Overall, like, oh, it's just such a good movie. I see your points. I do see your points, but I still think you're not giving it enough credit. And I think
We're going to have to eventually like do a vote system or something to have people
yeah.
decide if
I think
who
you're
won.
leaning in too much on your ability to predict movies, because when it comes to be able to predict movies, you're on a whole nother level. And
I know it's not a pride thing, but I do know that I see things that other people don't
you have a
see.
knack
It's
for it.
a gift. I enjoy it. My son's picking up on these
So
things.
it's a DNA thing then.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't know. My 3-year-old who doesn't talk yet, he gets very emotional at the right points with every film
Okay.
that he's watching. So when something's exciting and stuff like that, he jumps up and runs around. When something is scary or depressing or sad, he'll come on like cuddle with us. Be like, it's just like, what is this? This is crazy, you know? It like he like feels the
Yeah.
movie, even though it's like, dude, some of the stuff should be going over your head. You're
Yeah.
3, you know. And then my son is always asking me, okay, so why is it raining now? Like he catches on to certain things because he knows that rain is like, okay, rain is significant in a movie. Why did they choose to make it raining here? You know, so because he and I have been working on a little bit of different processes. He wants to make some YouTube videos, which I'm still kind of wary of, just because I don't know if I want a 6-year-old and stuff getting involved in that. So I got to find out ways to protect him and things like that. But I also don't want. I mean, the highest paid YouTuber is actually like 9, 10 years old or something like that, or he started when he was like 9 or 10 years old. Did you know that the highest paid YouTuber is this little kid who does toy reviews, and he made like $20-some million a year. And I'm just like, yeah. So I'm just like, so it's not that kids don't belong on YouTube. I'm never going to say that, you know, but I do know that there's a certain amount of stuff that happens with YouTube and crazy people out there, and the way people are able to track people down nowadays with IP addresses and all that sorts of stuff, that I'm just like, I'm not necessarily wanting to put my family in that kind of, my kid at least, in that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm okay with me being on screen talking to you about movies, but little kid on there making his own little content, completely different story. So, yeah. Anyways, I really have to use the bathroom, so I think we should probably
cut it off
end
now.
it here.
We can definitely cut.
It's only been like an hour and 20 minutes that we're recording.
We did have about 27 minutes opening banter, so I mean, it makes sense. You know? So, well, next week we'll be doing Hot Fuzz, so we can look forward to that. Well, you can look forward to that. I really do not like that movie.
It actually works out perfectly though, because that's leaving. Because we're recording this the last week of May, and that's leaving on May 31st. So we can. It's leaving HBO Max on May 31st, so we get to watch it before it leaves.
Works out timing wise. Nice.
So, so if you push it off too long,
Yeah,
you're going to miss
right.
seeing
I
it.
wouldn't want to do that. You know, I
No,
really got to see this movie again.
I hope it holds up.
All
All
right.
right, man. Well, this has
It
been a
has
good
been,
discussion. Thank you for joining us
yeah,
for watching Buddy Movies. Remember to like,
right.
subscribe,
Yeah, put your
share.
comments in the,
Um,
share comments, what you think thought of the movie, whether you agree with us or with me, with Mark, anything in between. Let us know in the comments.
yeah. And check out, if you like the content we're making and want to support us, check out
Yeah.
patreon.com/buddymovies. So, thank you for
Yes.
joining us and
Have a
have a
good
good
day. Stay
day
cool.
and stay cool. Yeah.